Welcome to the Cinematic Explainer. Today, we're unpacking the story of a guy who literally built the ancient world as we know it, Alexander the Great. We're going to see how he systematically conquered the known world. And honestly, perhaps even more fascinating, we'll dive into the chilling, unsolved medical mystery surrounding his bizarre death. Let's trace the epic journey of an undefeated god-king.
I mean, it's just wild to even think about. Conquering the known world by the time you're 25? Incredible. But was history's absolute greatest warrior actually buried alive at 32? It sounds like a ridiculous Hollywood thriller, right? But this is real history. How in the world does a guy with unmatched military genius and absolute psychological mastery meet a fate that terrifying and completely accidental? Well, to figure out how it ended, we really have to jump back to the beginning, to the burning fury that fueled his entire empire.
So, let's set the stage here. The real catalyst for Alexander's campaign wasn't just some blind ambition for power. No, it was deeply, deeply rooted in vengeance. See, generations before Alexander, King Darius of the Persian Empire invaded Greece. And they didn't just defeat armies, they completely desecrated sacred temples and smashed thousands of statues into literal dust. That left generations of Greeks, basically every kid growing up, totally thirsty for revenge against the Persians. That simmering ancestral anger, that was the foundation of Alexander's entire worldview. And man, did he act on it fast. Born in the small town of Pella in Macedonia, Alexander wasn't exactly treated like a normal kid. People, including his own mother, legitimately believed he was the son of a god. Zeus himself, actually. His dad, King Philip II, was determined to mold him into this ultimate king. And his rise was just meteoric. Picture this. At barely 10 years old, he tames this incredibly wild, aggressive horse that literally no one else could handle. By 18, he's commanding the cavalry alongside his dad at the pivotal Battle of Chaeronea, just showing these crazy early signs of greatness. And by 25, master of Asia, the whole thing.
But here's the thing. Pure military muscle, that's really only half the story. To understand how he kept this massive empire together, we've got to talk about what I like to call the Aristotle effect. See, his dad brought in the absolute greatest minds in Greece to tutor him, most famously the philosopher Aristotle. For 3 crucial years, Aristotle didn't just teach him how to swing a sword. He taught him patience, open-mindedness, and this razor-sharp sense of diplomacy. And that right there was Alexander's greatest weapon, an unmatched diplomatic mind that let him see way beyond the battlefield.
So how did he actually use that? Well, traditional conquest back then was pretty brutal. You invade, you destroy the local culture, and you force your laws down everyone's throats. But Alexander completely flipped the script when he pushed into Asia Minor. Instead of wiping out the Persian commanders and governors, he actually let them keep their jobs. He let them live how they wanted to live. By skipping the brute force and respecting their culture, he effortlessly won the loyalty and, honestly, the hearts of the people he just conquered. A total game changer. Diplomacy is great, sure, but to truly avenge his people, being a smooth talker wasn't going to cut it. He had to face the absolute heart of the Persian Empire, which brings us to the ultimate test, the Battle of Gaugamela. Alexander marches his troops right toward the main Persian army for the final showdown, and his goal wasn't just to win a skirmish, it was to completely annihilate his ancient enemy once and for all.
And guys, the mismatch here was just staggering. Alexander's army was basically a tiny force of 27,000 soldiers. Waiting for them, King Darius III's massive Persian army. We're talking well over 100,000 troops. To make things worse, Darius knew all about Alexander's tactical tricks, so he purposely picked this massive flat terrain. He wanted to make sure his huge numbers could easily surround and just swallow up the smaller Greek force. The odds were, quite literally, impossible.
So, what do you do? How do you win an unwinnable battle? You use sheer, absolute, tactical genius. Here's how his famous gap strategy went down. First, he has his Greek front line fake a retreat, making it look like they're buckling under the pressure. The Persians, getting totally greedy for a quick win, rush forward into the middle. But that sudden rush created this massive gap in the Persian lines. Alexander instantly pivots, drives his forces straight through that hole, and causes absolute, total chaos in the Persian rear. King Darius was so terrified he literally fled his own battlefield and was later assassinated by his own guys. Just like that, the greatest empire in the world fell to a 25-year-old.
After that massive victory, his empire just exploded, eventually stretching all the way over to Afghanistan. But again, remember the Aristotle effect? He didn't just conquer these folks. He actually celebrated their local festivals. He didn't force Greek laws on them. He kept their officers in place. He even married the daughter of his fallen enemy, Darius. It was brilliant.
It secured the unwavering loyalty of the Persian people. And on top of that, he took all the hoarded wealth of the old empire and pumped it back into the economy, making the whole region absolutely boom with trade.
But, absolute power does some really wild things to the human mind. And this is where we enter a much darker chapter, the God complex. I mean, think about it. If everyone tells you you're the son of a god, and then you actually conquer the known world by 25, you're going to get a little arrogant. His ego just ballooned, and it caused serious resentment among his own commanders and his own army. When rumors of conspiracies started bubbling up, Alexander got incredibly paranoid. If he even slightly suspected someone plotting against him, brutal execution. No questions asked. The great unifier was slowly morphing into a tyrant.
Yet, the addiction to conquest, it's basically impossible to turn off. Even with his own men betraying him, Alexander just couldn't stop. He turned his eyes east. He forced his exhausted army through the treacherous Khyber Pass, driven by this absolute, insatiable thirst for the legendary wealth of India. But he was walking right into what would be his most grueling, exhausting military challenge yet.
Because the pushback he got there was unlike anything he'd ever faced. In Persia and Asia Minor, kings would often just surrender, totally intimidated by Alexander's brain and his reputation. But when he reached modern-day Pakistan, he ran into King Porus. And Porus did not kneel. He fought Alexander relentlessly, month after bloody month. It was a brutal war. Ultimately, Alexander did win, but he was so blown away by Porus's bravery and skill that he didn't just give Porus his kingdom back. He actually gave him more land to rule. That's how much respect he had for the guy.
But then, this grand, sweeping epic comes to a shockingly abrupt halt. It's 323 BC. We're in Babylon. Alexander the Great, the undefeated king of the world, catches a fever and dies just 10 days later. He's only 32. But honestly, the fever isn't the real mystery. The mystery is what happened next. For 6 whole days after they declared him dead, his body didn't decompose. At all. Not a single sign of rot. How is that scientifically possible?
Well, modern doctors have a genuinely chilling theory about this. Researchers now think Alexander didn't just die of some basic fever. He might have had a massive stroke or a rare neurological disorder like Guillain-Barré syndrome. This would have caused total, locked-in paralysis. His body's need for oxygen would have completely plummeted. His breathing would have become so shallow you could barely notice it, and his pupils would have been fixed and dilated. Back in the ancient world, doctors didn't check your pulse, they only checked for breath. So because his breathing was basically invisible, they likely declared him dead way too early. Meaning, history's greatest conqueror was likely fully conscious, totally paralyzed, and completely terrifyingly buried alive.
It is just a horrifying, tragic end to such a spectacular life. But despite only being on this earth for 32 years, the aftermath of his death literally reshaped humanity. His passing kicked off what we call the Hellenistic period. For the next 2,000 years, the footprint of his incredibly brief life sparked an era of Greek cultural dominance that touched every single corner of the ancient world.
Let's actually put the sheer scale of that legacy into perspective. Cities? He founded over 50 of them, like Alexandria in Egypt, and literally millions of people still live in those cities today. Trade? His campaigns permanently opened the routes connecting Central Asia to Europe, which totally laid the groundwork for the famous Silk Road. Military? The brilliant tactics he used at Gaugamela, they are literally still being taught in military academies right now. And his name? He is immortalized as Sikandar, which means winner, across Persian, Arabic, and Sanskrit cultures. Even today, the phrase Jojita Wahi Sikandar keeps his legend alive.
And I want to leave you with this one number just burned into your mind: 2,000. That is the thousands of miles that Greek culture physically traveled to reach the borders of India, all because of one man's relentless drive. He permanently bridged the gap between Central Asia and Europe, totally weaving together cultures that had literally never interacted before.
So that brings us to the big, lingering question for today's explainer. If a 32-year-old could build the known world, conquer immense empires, spread an entire culture across continents, and permanently alter the course of human history, what on earth would he have done if he had lived a full life? It's one of those thoughts that just makes you realize how incredibly fragile yet totally powerful human history really is. Thank you so much for joining me for this explainer, and hey, keep questioning the history you think you know.